Up next on Inside Sim Racing, what's old is new again. Welcome to episode 1 of Inside Sim Racing. I'm Brian Bielanski, and my guest today is kind of the whole reason why this show is coming back on the YouTubes, Darin Gangi. Darin, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Brian. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Before I get to the first question, which I ask every guest, I think we should take 2 seconds and talk about how we got to here real fast. For those of folks who are longtime followers of the Inside Sim Racing YouTube channel, you don't know who I am, but you probably know who this guy is. But I run a podcast, Darren, called Inside the SCCA. And I've been looking to expand my shows, and I said, I do this sim racing thing. Let's do Inside Sim Racing. Well, then I did a Google search and a Yahoo and a YouTube search, and it turns out there was already an Inside Sim Racing, and I was crushed. I'm like, that's my baby, Inside blank. And I talked with my team, and I said, well, we could play this one of 2 ways. I could just do it and do it's easier to beg for forgiveness than ask for permission, or I could go and try to reach out to whoever owns this thing and ask them if I can have it. And I thought to myself, and I said, if it were me, I'd be really not happy if someone did this without asking. So I did the right thing, at least what I thought was the right thing, reached out to you, we had a conversation, and it turns out, well, we're here today, and we'll get into that more in just a minute. So, Darren, I ask every guest I have on all of my shows every first-time guest, the same question, and it is this. How did you get mixed up in this crazy thing we love called sim racing?
That's a great question. Just car lover as a kid. My dad drag raced. So actually, my stepdad and my father both were in the drag racing scene. And my grandfather loved cars. And so I think it was just a combination of that. Speed Racer, you remember Speed Racer?
Oh, yeah.
The cartoon. As a kid growing up in Los Angeles, it was on UHF channel. And I think that got me into racing. So I think it was just, I call it having the speed gene. So just always wanting to go fast and just loved cars. And I think that's, the combination of all those things, that's where it all started.
You say Speed Racer. We were just talking about before we started the show how AOL is finally turning off its dial-up. And my first AOL password was Speed Racer.
So you're very familiar.
Absolutely. So
for the viewers of Inside Sim Racing, same question to you.
Oh gosh! So this is a great story. A little sad, but a great story. My best friend was early in on sim racing, all right from beginning. I'm guessing he did the pre-iRacing sim racing and all this kind of stuff. But when iRacing happened, he's like, "Oh, you got to do this iRacing thing." I said, I can't. I got a newborn, and I'd like to stay married. And I knew if I started sim racing, I would get hooked, and I would be like all of my time, and it would be the end of me. So I put it off. And then I guess it was probably 2019. Alex was getting towards the end of high school, and everything was kind of in a good place, and I had a little more time, and I said, G-Dub, all right, I'm ready to go sim racing. Tell me what I need to do. And he had started walking me through getting a computer set up and getting a wheel and everything. And he had this thing he did every Thursday night called the Thursday Night Sim Racing League. And it was a bunch of his buddies who got together. And it turns out they would do the iRacing Endurance series. So their Thursday nights were typically spent preparing for the 24 Hours of Daytona or the 12 Hours of Sebring or whatever. And
nice.
But it was all these guys who got together every Thursday night, and I was like, okay, that sounds like fun. I can make Thursday nights available. And I was just getting ready I just bought my stuff. COVID hit. And unfortunately, my buddy passed away during COVID just before I was able to actually sim race with him.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
Yeah, so that's the little sad part about it. But every day, every time I sit in the rig, I hear G-Dub swearing at me on my shoulder. Brake later, turn in sooner, all this kind of stuff. He's my guardian angel or coach on my shoulder through all of this. So,
Nice.
and his son's still part of our sim racing league, which is great. And it's kind of the way I continue to connect now that he's no longer with us. But that's how I got started. So my first time ever in a sim was probably not including what did we play as kids? What was that at the arcade?
Pole position?
Pole position, yes. Since pole position, it was probably May of 2020 or so is when I first did this. And gosh,
Wow.
did I stink then, and I still stink now. But we're having fun with it.
Hey, having fun's the most important part.
It is. So, all right. So a lot of people, when I started talking about this, and one of my buddies just this weekend, when I told him I was starting Inside Sim Racing, he goes, there's a channel that already called Inside Sim Racing. Do you know about that? I'm like, well, funny you should say that. And I explained to him what was going on. And he goes, yeah, I used to watch that channel a ton when I was getting started. That was a really, really popular channel. I'm like, funny you should say that. So, Darren, this has been around. Inside Sim Racing on YouTube has been around since the early 2010s, right?
2007. Yeah,
Oh,
as a matter of
2007.
fact. Yeah, as a matter of fact, when this airs, this will be just after the 18th anniversary. So we relaunched on August 18th, and that was 18 years from the day we started it. So yeah, back in 2007.
Fantastic. So not only was it in sim racing kind of in its infancy at that point in time, right? So was YouTube, right?
YouTube definitely was. Sim racing, actually. So I've been sim racing since the mid 90s. Actually, you mentioned AOL. So back when it was just AOL, CompuServe, and I think there was a Yahoo service. I was on CompuServe actually, and did some offline racing with what was the Papyrus games. So Papyrus was pre-iRacing, and Papyrus developed. Indianapolis 500, the sim in, I don't know, late 80s, early 90s. And then it was IndyCar 1, NASCAR 1, etc.
Right.
And then in about 94, 95 was when we were doing dial-up racing, basically. So it goes way back before 2007. And like online racing probably didn't really start to. I mean, we were doing dial up and doing that stuff. We were dialing directly, and that was expensive. Back when you had to pay 10 cents a minute or whatever it was. I mean, that was a bargain. But as a matter of fact, I heard Dale Jr. talking about that recently on, I think it was one of his podcasts.
Yep.
So I'd see him out there racing, dialing into Papyrus headquarters in Massachusetts. So I've been doing it. I've been basically sim racing since it truly began in like the mid 90s, mostly offline stuff. And then that's where it was NASCAR 1 or 2 by them that, where the online racing started. And that was like, and I wasn't really a huge NASCAR fan. I like NASCAR, but I was more into IndyCar at the time. And so all I could race online was NASCAR, and I just totally got into it. I got hooked.
Yeah. So I guess when people complain about how expensive iRacing is, and you should just tell them to go pound sand.
Yeah. My brother was really bad. Like he spent in the thousands on dial-up phone bills, and I heard of guys that spent even more than that. So yeah, it wasn't cheap. Yeah, I had to and I just had my first daughter. My first daughter was probably about 5 or 6 at the time. So I was broke, and I really couldn't afford it. So I really had to budget my online sim racing time. And I can't even call it online really, because we were just dialing up. But I go way back with sim racing. So yeah, basically I was a gamer growing up. So more about my history. Yeah, just a gamer growing up, and always kind of gravitated towards racing games, and then I basically learned how to operate a PC in DOS back in the DOS days, just to sim race, just to race those titles.
Yeah. I didn't do much gaming. I had we had like the Atari, the original Atari, and I kind of stopped at that point. The one thing I did a ton of, do you remember those little Mattel handheld games? There was a football and a basketball.
Yep.
I was a killer on those games, and
yep, I loved those.
Those were
fantastic. There was an auto racing one too.
There may have been, but I don't think I ever had that one. I'm not quite sure.
It was basically just a little blip, and you just made it go left and right just to avoid the falling blips.
It was kind of like Tetris, but going in the other direction.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
So I was never really into the gaming stuff, and I started designing graphics and stuff like that. That's when I got really into computers with the Macintosh in college and all of that kind of stuff. So, but I was my parents were really early adopters to computers, which is interesting because my parents weren't technically savvy for the most part. But for some reason, Mom and Dad figured this computer thing would probably be something that we should have and know about. And so we had a PC in the house in like 1980. It was the Texas Instruments TI-99, and then there was the Sinclair 1000, and these were computers that you'd plug into a cassette deck is where you would get that would be your hard drive or your disk drive, and you connect it to your computer with a little with an interface and a coax cable into your TV, and because there were no computer monitors back in the day, you would just have a TV that you would connect it into. So we were early on into the computer thing. I was one of the only kids in college in 1988 to have a PC in my bedroom, in my dorm room. Everyone else had to go to the computer lab to type out and fight for a computer to type up their reports and stuff. I could actually do it in my dorm room. And then I was actually I was selling beer money for people to come and use my PC in my dorm room so they didn't have to go to the computer lab. So I would charge them like $10 an hour, and in 1988, $10 would buy me a night's worth of beer.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, so that was my little scam in college, and then they would take their little floppy disk over to the computer lab to print. But yeah, I never did any gaming until like I said, about 2020. Other than solitaire on my phone. So so it's been a whole new deal for me.
I bet.
Tell us a little bit about you've gotten to the point 2007 gets here. That must have been in the first year or two of YouTube. I don't remember exactly when YouTube launched, but it had to have been very on. What made you think about starting a YouTube channel?
So Sean Cole and I, the guy that I started it with, he raced in a league that I had. Matter of fact, the league's name I not stole it, but it was SSCA. So it was simulated. Well, originally it was Simulated Stock Car Association, and then I changed it to Simulated Sports Car. But so Sean raced in this league that I had, and then we started doing some broadcast stuff. Some of the top names in like sim racing back in that day, a guy named Gregor Hutu and Dom Doohan and the guys that were really at the top. I don't remember how we got in contact with the guy that was broadcasting that league, and then we just started doing commentary for it, and we really loved it. And people would be like, "Yeah, you guys are pretty good at that." And so we just started brainstorming, like, hey, what could we do? Like, let's do a 24/7 racing channel where we're just showing these races. And then we thought, that's probably not going to go over that well. 'Cause, I mean, we'd get some views, but it wasn't like, thousands of people were wanting to watch people that they had no idea who it was racing video games.
Right.
So we actually, YouTube would only allow at the time, I think, 10 minutes tops. And we couldn't do anything in HD, and we weren't even filming in HD originally. It was like I think 1280 by 720.
Sure.
And our first show was 50 minutes long or more. And there was a platform called Stage 6 that we ended up uploading it to, and that's where our first show is. And we had a website that was tied to that league, that SSCA league. So I think we just kind of started promoting it through there and just kind of, I wouldn't say spamming, but like, there was a handful of forums around. Race Sim Central was one. Black Hole Motorsports was another. We just started like just posting links to that. And that's how we got started. And then we ended up cutting up that show into segments and then putting it on the YouTube channel.
Right.
Stage 6, it doesn't even exist anymore. I don't think it was around for more than a year or two after that. And then it pretty much right around that time, 2008 or so, we ended up becoming a YouTube partner. And then they unlocked pretty much unlimited time and then HD. And so, yeah, we were in early in the YouTube days. Like, matter of fact, I was hoping, I have a bunch of hard drives from back in those days.
Oh my gosh.
And I was hoping to have that complete show, and I don't even have it. It's nowhere on the internet. It's like we have it in 3 segments on the YouTube channel, on this YouTube channel.
Right.
And, but yeah, I don't even have the original show in its entirety. But so yeah, that's how we started. And we basically created it because, we would tell people at work or our friends or family, like, oh yeah, like, what did you do last night? Oh, I ran a race at Talladega, or I ran a race at wherever. And they're like, what, you sitting on your couch doing this? And we're like, no. At that time, I had a wood rig that I had put together. Found some guy on a forum that put the plans out there. And Sean used to work for Skip Barber.
Okay.
And as a mechanic, and ended up getting a chassis from them, and he converted a chassis into a sim rig.
Oh, cool.
And so anyway, I remember we were on the phone one day and we just started brainstorming, like, what can we do? And the original name, and that's the channel URL is Sim Racing Tonight.
Got it.
And so that was the original name of the show. And that's just how we started it. I mean, that's how we came up with it.
And what was the response early on? I mean, now I look at it and the channel has over 100,000 followers, like almost 150,000 followers, subscribers. How was it received? What was the growth of that initial channel?
That's a great question. It took a while. It took probably 2 years to really hit.
Okay.
And like in the YouTube in the gaming section, we weren't really picked up much in the gaming section of YouTube, and we weren't covering anything on the consoles, which were much bigger than the PC. PC stuff was, I mean, it's niche as it is, but that was like very niche. Like nobody knew about it, and so I mean, we'd be lucky if we got a couple thousand views on a show. But we just kept kind of plugging away and going to trade shows and meeting companies like Thrustmaster and Logitech and getting early access to some of the games. And so it took a while. It took probably, so the show that really took off was we ended up getting the Logitech G27 before anybody had it.
Got it.
And that was, I think, mid-2009. So it was about 2 years in. And again, I think at that point we were lucky if a show got up to 10,000 views. And so that one, we got that. Nobody else had it. So we were like the only ones doing this kind of stuff. And Logitech had been teasing it. And the Tokyo Game Show was whatever the date we launched that show. Overnight, we got 50,000 views on that show.
Wow.
And it was like, oh my God, like we did it.
Yeah.
And so, and it just kind of kept, it was like the snowball effect. It just kept getting bigger as after that show, it really started taking off.
So this is probably a little in the weeds, but I'm sure there's a lot of people, YouTube people out there, YouTube fans who kind of know how YouTube works. And I started on YouTube after 2020. And so were you already monetized in the YouTube sense at that point in time when you hit that first big one?
Yeah. But it was, we weren't making much money on YouTube. We'd use Google AdSense, I think is what it is. And fractions of a penny per view.
Still that
basically,
way.
Yeah, is basically what we were making. So it was the only way for us to really make money was through sponsorships.
Sure.
And on that show, matter of fact, we knew we had something that was going to potentially be pretty big with that show because it was exclusive, and I think we had like 3 or 4 different sponsors at least on that show, and at that point, before that, I was working for the Red Cross. Actually, at the time, I was working for the Red Cross, but it was a contract position. I knew it was going to end, and it was in biomedical stuff, and I could have potentially gone that route, but I really just wasn't happy, and so actually, it was way before that 2009 show. 2007 is back when we started. I had that job, but I was pretty much at a point where if it didn't start making money, I was going to have to go back to doing that stuff. And that show is what got us to the point where Sean and I were able to, we were able to start making a living on it.
Wow.
And not making much, but just enough to survive.
Yeah.
So yeah, we got lucky. I mean, we got more than lucky. We worked hard and we put ourselves in a lot of places to network. And, we were at every trade show that we can go to. Luckily, being in LA, E3, the gaming expo was right there, so we could go to that every year. CES was in Las Vegas, so we could drive there without spending too much money. So we were able to stay local and just meet a lot of people, and that really helped us take off.
We should do a show sometime on that G27 wheel and kind of how that was the wheel that kind of exploded this whole thing almost, right?
Yeah, it definitely was. So before that, there was their driving. They had the G25 actually, which was a really good wheel. We reviewed it actually on the channel, and it was nice. But everybody was waiting for that G27, and that's about that time it started to take off. It's still, I don't think PC sim racing really took off until when COVID hit. Right. I mean, it was slowly growing. Like iRacing came around in 2008, and it was slowly getting bigger and bigger. The console side was huge with Gran Turismo and Forza. Right. I mean, they were in the millions of people, multi-millions of people, driving those, and us covering those titles is what really. That's another thing that really kind of set us apart, and a lot of the hardcore, the old hardcore guys didn't like it, but we just kind of wanted to cover everything that we could, and that's where the numbers really were, because we go to these E3 shows and get exclusive on launches of game titles like the Forzas and the Gran Turismos, Codemasters. They were doing the Formula One games, and we got a great relationship with those guys. So yeah, it was that stuff that really helped. If we stuck with PC sim racing, we would have never. I don't think we ever really would have gotten as big as we did.
Interesting, and now all the hardest of the hardcore sim racers, really look down their nose at the console stuff.
Yep,
it's kind of flipped itself on the head. Honestly, one of the reasons that, probably 3 or 4 years before I made the decision to actually start sim racing, I probably could have done it a little sooner, but I'm a Mac guy. And the idea of going out and having to buy another computer to do this or whatever was just I didn't have the money to do it. I didn't really want to do it because I'm a Mac guy, and you know how Mac and PC people are.
Oh yeah.
As a creator, I was clutching my Macintosh and I just didn't want to give up my MacBook or my whatever. And I think in the end, G-Dub was going to send me an old computer to use, and I ended up going out and buying one off of eBay, and that was a whole mistake. But that's a different story altogether. But it was good enough to get me started, and at least it's that entry drug, that gateway drug.
Gateway drug. Yep.
And now you and I are here talking about a podcast on this thing that I tried to avoid for so many years. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Well, and being in the real racing world, I would imagine that a lot of people that sim race. And I know a lot of up-and-coming drivers. William Byron is a perfect example of a guy that started, on iRacing, and now he's racing in the Cup Series in Jeff Gordon's old car.
Yep.
or for that team, I should say. But yeah, it's been a really cool journey, and it's been amazing to watch the evolution of, since my first wheel was called the bungee wheel. It was a Thrustmaster T1, and the tension, there was no force feedback.
Right.
The pedals were garbage, but I was felt like I was racing versus trying to do something on a keyboard or a joystick. So yeah, like I said, I've been part of it since the beginning. But yeah, it's great to hear you get involved not that long ago, and now you're doing a podcast about it.
Well, and one of the reasons that the idea for the podcast came up for me, honestly, is because, well, two reasons. Inside the SCCA, there's a total membership of like 65,000 people. You get varies a couple thousand either way from year to year. And that's a pretty niche audience for a YouTube channel. Mm-hmm. And my channel has grown, and thankfully, because it's a voracious niche, much like sim racers, I've been able to get sponsors without a ton of followers. But there's kind of a ceiling on the YouTube side for a channel like mine, whereas with Inside Sim Racing, it's a global phenomenon now, and the interest is so much out there. I thought, well, this would be a good new podcast to do, and that's what got me thinking about it. And I think the other part of it was the sim has become such a common thread on my other podcast, talking about, with everybody from young drivers to older drivers. Do you use a sim? How do you use a sim to get ready for racing? And that's the line of questioning on the SCCA show is, how do you use the sim to prepare yourself for in real life or real world racing? And we talk about that a lot. And I was like, if this is such a crossover now, it kind of legitimizes it. Got Max Verstappen, and all the Formula One guys will show up on iRacing, and it was just like, okay, I think it's time to do this. And that was what piqued my interest in getting a show going. So at some point in time, and this is why I reached out to you, the Inside Sim Racing channel kind of went dark on YouTube. What was the story, if you want to share, what was the story behind all of that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to share it. So I mentioned Sean Cole. He was the guy I started it with. And so we moved from, so I'm going to go a little long here, but I'll try to not go too long. But anyway, 2013, we moved up here to, 2012, we moved up here to Spokane, Washington from California. And about a year later, he ended up deciding to go back to California and wanted to do his own thing and started up. He's still doing it. He's got a channel called The Sim Pit.
Okay.
And so then I was doing it by myself for a little while, and brought a couple different people on the channel, and we also had a woman on the show called Jessica. Her name was Jessica, is Jessica Lopez. I just talked to her a couple weeks ago, as a matter of fact. But I just felt like the three of us just had like great chemistry when it came. Like we really bonded, and we really had a lot of fun. And so anyway, long story short, we moved up here. Well, it's going to be a long story, but anyway, moved up here. That moved us away from Jessica. And at the time, like doing podcasts like this in locations across the country, we just weren't able to do stuff like this. So Jessica wasn't part of the show anymore. So Sean and I were doing it for about a year. He went back to California, and then doing it by myself, I missed that, doing it with those two, because we just had so much fun doing it and growing the channel. And then I ended up bringing up a guy that was doing some blogging for the website, a guy named John Sable. He lived in Ohio at the time and was in the aerospace industry as an engineer. It just kind of got burned out, didn't want to do it, and had the opportunity to come work on the channel. And so he moved here to Spokane, and I kind of passed the torch to him. And part of it was financial, I guess. Well, it wasn't even really financial, because we were doing okay. It was kind of the grind in getting advertising. We were surviving on advertising dollars, and selling advertising, as you know, is not easy. And so one of our sponsors at the time, Sim Experience, I had met them a few times and talked to them about, hey, I'd really love to come work for you guys. And they were the first company to develop a turnkey direct drive system, did motion systems, and they'd flown us to Ohio to check out their stuff at one point, and saw them at there was I wouldn't really call it a trade show, it was more of a gathering called iRace for Life that took place every year, and I got to know Bernie, the owner of Sim Experience, and anyway, got him to hire me. And so that was in about 2015. Started working part-time for them, and then it was either go back to Inside Sim Racing full-time or go full-time with Sim Experience. And so I was able to go full-time with Sim Experience. And a little bit before that, I had sold 50% interest in the company to a guy in Italy named Raffaele Cerrucci. And are you familiar with Playseat, the brand Playseat?
Yes.
So he wasn't, so there was another guy named Fernando Smith that probably still owns Playseat. But Raphael had come in and basically established them on the web, like with a web store and stuff. And he was based in Italy. So, and we were talking, when Sean was here, that's actually kind of what broke Sean and I up. We were going to bring them on as a partner, and we just kind of disagreed about how that was going to happen. And then Sean ended up going back to California. But so little while after Sean left, I brought Raphael in as a partner. So he basically bought 50% of the company. And he redeveloped the website for us. And part of the plan was he was going to be bringing in European-based sponsors because he had all these ties through Playseat. Well, sure. that never really materialized. And so I guess I really just got to a point where, again, it was either go the Sim Experience route or go full blast back with Inside Sim Racing. And I ended up going the Sim Experience route. And then at the time, and then I offered to sell all of it to Raphael, and he took me up on it. So sold everything to him in 2017, and John Sable at the time was still working for the channel. And he had moved back to Ohio at that point and was doing all the shows from there. And so yeah, that's pretty much in a nutshell what happened was sold it all off to him, and then John John needed more stability, was going to get married and wanted to have kids. And again, the advertising grind just wasn't working for him. And so he went back to the aerospace industry. His last show was 2018, beginning of 2018.
Right.
So it pretty much just sat dormant until 2021. I started the U.S. division of Sim Motion and asked Raphael if I could do some shows on the channel, partially because I wanted to bring it back because it was near to my heart. You know, it was something that we had created, and it was just a bummer seeing it, you know, sit dead for years. And I thought, oh, you know what? I got some extra time. I'm gonna see if I can bring it back, and did like 3 shows, and then Sim Motion just slowly started growing. And I just didn't have the time, and I just didn't have the motivation to do it by myself.
Sure.
So yeah, that's what happened. That's why it's been sitting dead or dormant for so long.
So this is a good point to ask the question. Tell us about Sim Motion.
Okay, so I was working for Sim Experience. I met Jens Perkot. They bought Sim Experience product to resell in Germany. And so they had Sim Motion, and he was doing like motion components, and then just started slowly branching out to sell other components. and just out of this small shop in Germany, SimMotion. And we became great friends because of that relationship through Sim Experience. And while I was working at Sim Experience, we would literally were such good friends. We were talking every day, like through Facebook. He ended up coming here into the States, met him and his wife. And so anyway, he wanted me to come work for him for a while, and he just couldn't match what I was making at Sim Experience at the time. And then COVID hit, and Sim Experience laid me off. Literally on the lockdown, like 2 days after the lockdowns took place, I got a call from them saying, "Hey, we're not going to be able." Long story short, they laid me off, and so I was talking to Jens, and he's like, "Well, let's start SimMotion in the U.S." And before that, we were actually doing some stuff, some broadcast stuff for the Trans Am series. Like all the Trans Am guys couldn't, they couldn't race. So there was a league that was formed, and we were doing that and something for Skip Barber. So I was doing basically, I wasn't doing any broadcasting. I was just doing camera work. I was like running all the cameras and stuff. And then SimMotion just basically it was him and another guy, Thorsten Lingnau, that had SimMotion in Germany. And they sent me a bunch of SimMagic and Husingfeld product to sell. And we started a Shopify store here in the States and just slowly started selling stuff, and it just kept growing. So
and you now have a brick and mortar in Spokane, right?
Ish? Well, mostly ish. That's a good way to put it. I just kept reinvesting into more products. So now we carry SimMagic, Moza, V&M, Husingfeld, D-Box Motion, bunch of different brands. And I was doing it out of my garage for the first 2 years. And then got a small place here in town, was doing it out of there, and then moved out of this location here in January. Yeah, it's been great. I have a great team that work for the company now, and which really allowed me to do this again. So that's what got this going.
Cool. And at some point you got the channel back, and now you have control of it. And
yes.
When was the aha moment that it was really time to bring back Inside Sim Racing in earnest?
So we started creating content. Well, actually, every year since I had been creating since I created those 3 shows back in 21, I tried to buy it back. And they wanted much more than what I felt it was worth. Because they just didn't do anything with it. And it just, the subscriber base was up to 165,000 at one point, and now it's down to 159-ish. And so about every year I'd make them an offer. And they wanted far too much that I didn't have it. I didn't have the money to invest in that again. And so we started creating content for SimMotion. And it was always in the back of my mind that I'd love to have it back. And and at this point, basically it was just a couple months ago, I reached out to them again. I said, "Hey, make me an offer. You're not going to sell it. So what can we do?" They made me an offer. And at this point I could take it. So it was really, I have this great team that works for SimMotion that we were already creating content. And I thought, man, if we just had the freedom, and it was more commercially stuff. It wasn't really like what we did with Inside Sim Racing. We did some similar stuff, but it was mostly just to promote SimMotion. Right. And I just missed the creative freedom that we had with Inside Sim Racing to do whatever we wanted and cover the games and do DIY tech tips and just all sorts of podcasts like this. I mean, I wouldn't have done a podcast like this or having you do podcasts like this for the SimMotion channel. So it was just missing. sad that it was set. All the work that we did, myself and Sean and Jessica and everybody else that was John Sable and everybody else that was part of the team, and for it to sit dormant like that, it was painful.
Yeah.
So it's kind of my baby. I wanted to bring it back. So it was that, and just having the opportunity, being in a position to be able to do it, and so that's where we're at with it, and that's why I decided to purchase it back and hopefully get it back to where it was.
It's funny when you get your heart invested in something, and it's the reason why I contacted you, because for some reason the inside the franchise is something I really felt like I had an ownership of it, and I really put a lot of time into it. And when I chose Inside the SCCA, it was always with the idea that I could do inside IMSA, inside IndyCar, inside fill in the blank, F1 if I ever wanted to. And I figured I'd build this brand here, and then I'd expand it as it made sense. And we've done a couple of episodes of Inside Vintage Racing, and the next logical step for me was to do Inside Sim Racing. And part of it is a little selfish. I want to become a really good sim racer. I suck really bad right now. and this is kind of like my motivation to do a lot more of that. But I'm also planning to get back into real world racing. And you were talking about how there was all these people who have started to talk about using how they use the Sims, and back when I started racing, and you were talking about how when you told someone that you did sim racing, like, what do you mean, on your couch and all this kind of stuff? Well, back when I was doing my first real world racing, it was the same thing. When you would tell people on your weekends you go to the racetrack to go racing, they were like, is it go-karts? Is it stock cars like your local track? I mean, no, I go road racing at Road America and in Ohio, and I go to these tracks, and it meant really nothing to most people. And we didn't have even video in the cards that I could show anybody what I do. And now the racing that I do, I'm one of the announcers for the national series for SCCA. I can give them a YouTube channel and say, this is what I do. And now it's cool, that I go and do this stuff. So, the technology has so changed everything as far as promoting yourself, even at the grassroots level. And YouTube is a big part of that, and all the other different platforms. And now I have a Twitch channel that I'm going to do my sim racing. I'm going to stream my stuff live on Twitch as Graybeard Sim Racer is my Twitch handle. And we're just going to have a lot of fun with it and create content and hopefully entertain people and maybe educate people along the way as well. So I'm looking forward to all of that as we launch the podcast version of Inside Sim Racing. So what makes you most excited about opening this chapter now, or reopening the chapter?
Just like what I said, I missed it. Not so much being on camera, but just the creativity and just having fun with that side of things. We had so much fun creating this channel back with Sean and Jessica, and I was talking to Jessica a couple weeks ago, and she's like, that was some of the funnest times of my life was when we did that. We got to go on some really cool adventures. So I think it really was that, just bringing that back. And again, just seeing how much this industry's grown, and I don't feel like there's a lot of great influencers and YouTubers and people that make content in this space. But I really don't feel like Inside Sim Racing was ever replaced. I don't feel like there's an outlet that covers all the things that we did. And so I just felt like it was just something that was missing that I thought just would be great to be back in this community again.
Yeah, definitely. As far as the podcast goes, I've got some ideas as to how we're going to do the show. We're going to have, obviously, it's an interview-based show, so that will be the core of what we do. Who are we going to have on as guests, I've been asked, and I think it's going to be everybody from people who are participants, racers. Our next show is going to have Cam Eben as our guest. Cam is the current reigning world champion in the Global MX5 Cup Series in iRacing, and I've got another guest that we've done an episode with already, who has done over 1,000 laps on the big Nürburgring on iRacing to prepare to go racing at the Nürburgring. And
that's awesome.
He's now raced there twice or once, and he's going back in September to do it a second time now. And so we've talked to him a lot about. He's a former Goodyear test driver, so and we're talking about with him also. Goodyear has one of these multi-million-dollar motion sims that they use as part of testing new tires. So
who is it? Who's the driver?
Dave Ogburn.
Oh, okay.
And he's a real world racer with me in the SCCA, but he's got this also professional background. He won the One Lap of America a year ago in the Goodyear tire sponsored Porsche. Just a really great guy, and so we talked to him a little bit about that motion sim at Goodyear, as well as how it works, with what he does with the iRacing, and he coaches using iRacing. So many ways to talk about and so many ideas. I think we're going to have some industry experts on the show, tech experts, and we've got we're hoping to get someone from iRacing on the show as well. So I think, and it's not just going to be about iRacing, Darren. I think you mentioned without the consoles, you wouldn't have a channel probably, and there's so many other platforms besides the consoles. Maybe we'll do a little console stuff, because I know that's still a big deal. I hadn't thought about that. We should do some of that on the show also. But Le Mans Ultimate is now becoming big and prominent, and the new F1, we can argue whether it's a game or a sim, has come out, and so there's lots of different. Assetto Corsa is still popular in a lot of arenas. A lot of people still are using that. So, and I'm going to also be able to play on some of those platforms, which I've never played on, which I think will be fun to talk about that. So, and endless possibilities. I've got 250 episodes of my other show. I don't think we'll have any problem putting together 200 plus episodes of this show.
I don't think so either. And yeah, hopefully I can get some of the people I know. I've actually reached out to iRacing already about doing a podcast. And there's definitely some interest there. I'm going to that Sim Gaming Expo in September, and I hear Project Motor Racing is supposed to be there, and that's a new title that's coming out. And I don't know if you're familiar with, there's a guy named Ian Bell that was a really big name in the sim racing development world. He worked on Project Cars and Need for Speed Shift, and before that, GTR2, which was like one of the greatest sims of all time. So maybe we can get him on the show. Guy that I had a great relationship with the guys at Codemasters, and one of the lead developers at Codemasters was Stephen Hood. He's now the lead on Le Mans Ultimate.
Oh, cool!
So maybe we can get some of those guys
sure
on a podcast here with you. I think that'd be great.
Absolutely. So I've come up with a list of questions I'm going to ask every guest. And we're gonna run through them with you the first time here, and I think they're fun questions, and we all have a journey in this whole sim racing thing. So it's kind of journey exploration. So what was your first sim rig?
So I mentioned it earlier. There was a guy who went by, his handle was True Grit, and it was basically a 2x4 and plywood rig, and he had the plans in a forum somewhere. I got those plans and basically put it together, and so that was my first sim. It had a deck right in front of the wheel where I could put my CRT monitor. I didn't even have an LCD at the time. Those didn't even exist, actually, back then. And then I had a Thomas Super Wheel, was my wheel and pedal set, that I actually won that back. I mentioned CompuServe. I entered some offline race. I just had to submit my my results, and it was entered into a drawing, and I won this wheel and pedal set. So that was my first rig.
Cool. My first rig was a G29 that I actually drilled holes through the desk so I could bolt it to the desk. And I had a platform I put on the floor so that the wheels would stay in the same spot up against the wall. And on that platform, there was a 2x4 on the back so that the chair I'm actually sitting in right now could only roll back so far. And it kind of locked me in place as best I could. That was all I had room for. So that was my first rig. And then also, speaking of wood, I went and basically, and I'm putting the video together right now for my channel, I replicated one of the top-of-the-line commercial rigs you can buy right now. I'm not going to say which manufacturer, but the manufacturer actually puts everything on their instructions as far as the dimensions. So I out of 2x6s, because that's about 160 profiles, about a 2x6, I replicated to the millimeter this sim rig with 2x6s, 2x4s. And because I want to do the comparison of what an aluminum profile rig versus a wood rig, and whether you could get them to be as stiff and all of that kind of stuff. So it's going to be kind of a compare and contrast. I have a partnership that I've created with Full Send Sim, so I'm going to get my aluminum profile rig. But I wanted to build this. I went through the whole process of filming the build and putting it together. It looks great. From a distance, you probably can't even tell the difference. But so that's going to be one of the things on my channel as well. And
nice.
We'll tell people when that goes up and everything. So
very cool.
That should be fun. And I love the journey that people have in this sport. You know,
me too.
And Cam Eben, I'm not going to tell anybody what it is, but the guy who's won 3 world championships on iRacing, you are not going to believe what he uses for his rig.
I wouldn't be surprised. I've been a part of this for so long. I've seen and heard it all. And, so that was my first rig, but like you, I was bolting it to a desk and trying to figure out a way to keep the pedals from moving. And I saw those plans that guy True Grit put out there, and I was like, oh, that's it. And I think I bought a seat off of Jegs.
Yep.
And mounted that seat to that wood rig, and it was great. I mean, that's the rig that I had when we started this channel. I still had that rig, and it lasted me a while.
My seat's from a Honda Civic Si, and
nice.
Actually that's critical to the success of this wood rig, and I'm not going to tell anybody why. But we'll get into that when the time comes. So, all right, next question. What's your current rig?
So I have we sell at SimMotion, we sell a 160 millimeter chassis. So it's that with a SimMagic Alpha Evo wheelbase, Husingfeld pedals. I have a D-Box motion system. I ran triples I love triple monitors. Space was a little bit of a challenge, so now I'm just running a 57-inch curved screen. So that's my setup now.
I gave up on the triples too. They were a source of regular frustration for me, getting iRacing into my computer to work with triples. So I'm on a 47-inch ultra wide.
Okay, nice.
So that's kind of cool. All right, what's your favorite track to sim race on?
That's a great question. It's definitely not a very technical track, but I'd say the track that I just love racing at, and because I've raced it so many times, is the Daytona Road Course, because of the 24 Hours of Daytona. Last year is the first year that I missed on iRacing in the 24, other than it was 2017. I broke my ankle and I couldn't race in it. But every year since they've had that, I've raced in it. And then even before that, they had a 2.4 Hours of Daytona before they had the driver swaps. So I think it's just that I just mesh really well with that track. But I love Nordschleife.
Yep.
Pretty much wherever I'm racing. There's probably a few tracks that I don't like. But other than that, I love just racing anywhere and learning new tracks. But if I could pick just one to like where I feel like I'm the best, it's Daytona Road Course.
My first special event was the 2021 24 Hours of Daytona. And I was diagnosed with COVID 3 days before the event.
Oh.
And I quarantined in my sim race room just because that was the only place I could quarantine in our condo. I'm like, I'm in the room. I'm not leaving the room. I might as well continue. And I was exhausted at the end of it. I should have never done it. But I was the West Coast guy with an East Coast team, so they were looking at me to go through the whole nighttime while they slept, and that was our plan. And I made it through most of what I was expected to do before I was like, guys, I got to go to bed. But yeah, I love that. Was one of the reasons why I got involved, was to do the endurance racing. That's my shtick. I love endurance racing. So
same here. I think that's the best form of sim racing, because the other drivers are relying on you, and vice versa. And versus you jump in a race at any time, 24/7 on iRacing or wherever you're going to race, and you wreck out, you hit escape, and you're done.
Right.
But if you wreck in an endurance race and you've been practicing with 3-4 guys, and you're sharing that car, you feel horrible that you're the guy that wrecked that race. Matter of fact, in 21, we were running in the not the GT3 cars. We were running in a Corvette. I don't remember what the class was.
Yeah,
but
GT3
I
or
ended up.
whatever.
Yeah. I started the car, and I'm coming in for my first pit stop. We were doing really good at the start. I think we were up to 5th or something, maybe even a little bit higher. And I come into the pits, or I start to come down pit lane, and I didn't know where my pit stall was. And I think so we use an app called Crew Chief.
Yep,
I think that's what it's called.
So do we.
Yeah, and it'll usually count down. I wasn't supposed to start the car, and I jumped in at the last minute. And I'm coming down pit lane. I'm like, guys, where's my pit stall? Where's my pit stall? And they're like, you just passed it. It was like one of the first stalls in pit lane.
Oh.
And so I tried to limp the car around, ran out of fuel. And so I felt horrible.
Yeah.
But we ended up coming back. We ended up finishing second in
Nice.
class for that race. I mean, that was pretty much the biggest mistake that we made. We got caught up in a few things, but we overcame most of it and finished second in class, which was my best finish ever at Daytona. But I felt so horrible that I was the one that did. I was behind the wheel, so it was my fault.
Right.
But yeah, that's definitely, I think, the best form of sim racing is endurance racing.
Cool. Yeah, I joke that the only reason my team keeps me around is to help them get into a lower split. So, because the guys on my team are pretty good, and I am definitely the least talented on that team. So, what's your favorite sim platform?
As far as software goes, iRacing.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah,
cool.
Without a doubt. Because of that.
Yeah.
Le Mans Ultimate, I've driven pretty much all of them. Le Mans Ultimate feels great. The physics are great. I just miss the fact that we can't race 24 hours of Le Mans on iRacing because that title exists now. Because they've got the license. And I heard that they just started doing testing to do driver swaps and stuff. So I'd love to see that. But yeah, iRacing is definitely my favorite. Because I love everything, from dirt to NASCAR to IndyCar and again, my favorite's endurance racing. So I think that's the best place to race, in my opinion.
One of the pieces of content I'm going to do on the Twitch, as I like to call it, my kid gives me a hard time when I call it the Twitch, is I'm going to do a session. I'm going to do every track at every car in iRacing.
Nice.
So.
Oh, that'll be interesting.
That's a lot of content. Not in a row, over the course of many years.
Well, we'll have to cover some of that on this channel too.
Yeah.
I think that makes for a cool story.
Yeah. So it's about 150 tracks and 150 cars. So that's 300 Twitch streams right there.
You got your work cut out for you.
That's right. All right. Do you remember your first win?
It would have been back on that platform I was telling you, that dial-up platform.
Okay.
In that league, so I started that league, SSCA, and I think the second or third race in, I think it was like at Atlanta or something. I mean, we were limited. We didn't even have like the full schedule of tracks, but it was, mid-90s.
Yeah.
was my first win, and it was doing that. I remember how excited I was. Oh my God, I beat real people! versus racing against AI my whole life. But yeah, it was back then. What about you?
I haven't won a sim racing race yet. So
no kidding.
That's going to be a big momentous moment for me, when I get that first one in. So I'm looking forward to talking about that someday too. So it'll be fun. But
yeah,
I think you've kind of already maybe answered my last question. I was going to say best winner, best race. I'm going to guess maybe that's second place at Daytona.
Yep, absolutely. That one, and I still talk to the guys. Jens was part of that team. Jens is the guy that got me into sim motion. He was on that team. A guy that I've known since second grade. Scott Holmes was on that team, and then Butch Davis was a guy that I've known in sim racing since we started this channel.
Yep.
Every time we reconnect, we talk about that race, and so yeah, that was absolutely it for sure.
Very cool. Very cool. All right, so real quick, just want to thank you and Sim Motion as one of my partners now as well. So there'll be links to both Sim Motion and Full Send Sims in the show notes. So a big thank you to you and the folks at Full Send Sims. And I think we're kind of at the point where we start to wrap this thing up. Was there anything else you wanted to cover here? I mean, we've made a lot of ground at this point.
No, I just want to say thank you for being part of Inside Sim Racing, the reboot of the reboot. When you reached out to me, which actually we can touch on that really quick.
Sure.
How did you find me? Because I know you know Carrie Anderson, and you had her on Inside SCCA.
Yeah. So the ironic part is, all of the people who I know that know you, I haven't found that out until after you and I talked the first time. And I don't remember whether I found your name. Oh, you know what it was? You did that rebooting the show video.
Uh-huh.
And then I just found you on Facebook and just did a cold reach out on Facebook. That's how I...
Yeah. Because at the same time, so Carrie Anderson's local here in Spokane, and I've known her since pretty much I started Sim Motion, and so she reached out about the same time saying, "Hey, this guy's going to reach out to you about Inside Sim Racing," and so you must have talked to her or saw her at a race or something. So I was like, "Huh," and I think you by the time she got in touch with me, you had already contacted me, within 24 hours of that. So
yeah, so
interesting.
So I had recorded a show with her for Inside the SCCA not long after you and I had chatted the first time. So and I said, yeah, we're going to be doing because we talked about telemetry and coaching and how I was looking forward to using some telemetry and learning more about it so that I could use it on the to make me a better sim racer. And when I told her I was going to do Inside Sim Racing, she goes, "Oh yeah, I know Darren," and then we started that conversation. So it was pretty cool to make that connection. And then one of my guys at Full Send Sims, Beans Forrester, who's big with their group, said when I told him I was doing Inside Sim, he goes, "Yeah, there's another channel." He was the guy who said he watched you for a long time. So it's pretty crazy how this world is so big but so small.
Yes, it is. Well, it's great to have you as part of the channel. I'm glad when we started talking that we talked about collaborating and how this all came together. So I think you're going to be a great addition to the shows that we're putting out here on Inside Sim Racing.
Well, I'm looking forward to it, and it's our discussions very quickly. I think within the first 5 minutes of talking to you, when I first got on the phone with you, I was like, okay, this is a guy who I think we mesh and our ideas are in sync. And I'm to the point now where at my age, Darren, I had Tommy Kendall on one of my shows at one point in time. And he said something that really resonated with me. And this was as his career was winding down. I think he was mostly in the broadcast booth at the time. And he said to me, on the show, he said, "I just want to work with people I like who aren't mean or something along those lines, and who just kind of like I get along with, and that's what makes me happy. And that just was like, it resonated with me, and I'm like, whatever I do, I want to be with people who not think like I do, but we just kind of mesh together. And that first conversation we had, very quickly, I was like, you know what, I think this is going to work. So I think this is going to be a fun relationship.
Tommy Kendall seems like a really cool guy. I was a big fan of his when he raced in the Trans Am series, and then because of this show, I was at a Forza launch party, and he was there as like the MC or something, and he was standing off to the side by himself, and I walked up to him and I said, "Hey, Tommy, my name's Darin Gangi. Nice to meet you. I've always was a huge fan of yours," and he just seemed like a really genuine, cool guy. So that's cool. You brought him up.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. I guess that's where we wrap this up. Do you have any other last words before we get going?
No, just looking forward to working with you, and thanks for doing this podcast. It was great to talk about the future and the past of Inside Sim Racing, and like I said, I think you're going to be a great addition to the channel, and looking forward to seeing the podcast that you're going to be doing.
Sounds good. Sounds good. That's going to do it for this episode of Inside Sim Racing. You like what you're hearing? Subscribe, like, share, so you won't miss any episodes. Also, be great if you leave a comment, especially if it's a good one. If it's not a good one, put it on someone else's channel. Follow us on social media to find out who our next guest is. Leave a question. On Twitter, it's @TRN_updates. There's a new Inside Sim Racing every week. I'm Brian Bielanski. Have yourself a fantastic week. Stay safe and go drive a sim.